there were some hot girls in the gym who I remember back in the day stunk to high heaven. I wanted to tell them that, and I felt terrible, but I didn't want to embarrass them, and I didn't say a word. And it was because they weren't using strong enough deodorants. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever's on your mind: bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros. We are just a couple of weeks from getting truly into the thick of the IFBB pro schedule. We go right to the questions. We have a lot of questions lined up, a lot of good ones. First two questions on this show, of course, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, if you're working with a client who mainly wants to lose body fat, isn't as concerned with building, maintaining large amounts of muscle, do you still have them eat up to 6 meals per day? I know you mentioned that you only often yourself eat 3.
Well, I'm back to 6 again because ever since I went into surgery, I've been on my bodybuilding kick. I'm trying. I can't lift yet. That's the problem. Once I can start working out, I'll gain my weight back. But no, for weight loss, frequent meal timing is important because what it does is the act of eating actually stimulates metabolic rate. I can't believe how many people have come to me and said, they're doing this stupid intermittent fasting, which is good if you're trying to live a long time. But if you're trying to have a nice physique and look good and burn fat, not a great diet, because what happens is you're eating in a very limited time span throughout the day. So when you're eating, which is, your metabolism is going, but then the rest of the day, your metabolism shuts down. And a lot of people report that they're cold all day. It's because your metabolism is zero, essentially. So you're not burning calories. When you're eating all day long, every 2 to 3 hours, what's happening is your metabolism is constantly being stoked or stimulated, because every time you put food into your digestive system, metabolism has to kick on. So the actual act of eating burns fat. And that's important to understand. So if you ate a 2,500 calorie diet over 2 meals versus 6 meals, you're going to burn more calories and you're going to burn more fat if you ate it over 6 meals, even though you're eating the exact same amount of food. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's not. It's just the metabolic effect of the actual eating that you're doing. And so, yes, you want to eat 5 to 6 small meals a day, given your macros that you need to hit. So let's say you're 200 pounds, you want to get 250 grams of protein, for instance, you're going to spread that over 5 or 6 meals. Now, once again, depending on schedule, if I'm bodybuilding and I'm competing as a man, I'm going to eat 6 times a day. If I'm a woman, I'm going to eat 5 times a day. A lot of times with men who are just looking for weight loss and transformation type stuff, because they're not that heavy, they're under 200 pounds, usually, assuming they're not fat, and they're over 200, I'll put them on 5 meals a day. And that usually is enough, especially if they're not eating, if they're eating only 2 meals a day to begin with. Starting them out on 5 might be better. Then if they get really hungry down the road, I could always add an extra shake in or something like that. So yeah, you want to eat frequently throughout the day.
Second question, again, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Maybe not so much bodybuilding related, but more general health related. Your take on recent concerns regarding aluminum in deodorant. I have hyperhydrosis, so I stick to the clinical strength products or those with a high amount of their active ingredient. Should I avoid ones with trace metals? This has been a conversation for a few years now. So you start to have a lot more, I guess, quote unquote, natural forms of deodorant on the market. But you're in general, your thoughts about aluminum or other trace metals in deodorant?
what happened was when I was competing, I produced a lot of, I guess you could say, sweat, smelly sweat. The more steroids I took, the more I seemed to sweat and the more I seemed to smell, at least if I allowed it. Now, I'm a freak when it comes to showering and not having any kind of body odor. It's like drives me crazy. So I would shower twice a day when I was competing, but I used the strongest deodorant that I could. At the time, I was using Dial. Not Dial. I was using Dial soap. What was I using? Oh my God!
Like, it started with a degree.
No, it wasn't degree. It was, I forget. It was in a green. It's in a green thing. It's, I don't know. It's like, it looks like Species Green. I can't remember, but it's one of the, it's like one of the, top deodorants that has aluminum in it. Okay, put it that way, because aluminum unfortunately prevents you from sweating, and it also, whatever deodorizers they were putting in there, I didn't smell, and I did not want to smell. I didn't care what the freak I rubbed on my underarms, to be honest with you. And that was always my approach. And I would see these people in the gym, and they would stink. And I would go up to them, especially with my friends. I'm like, you guys stink. And they're like, I'm like, what are you using for deodorant? Oh, I'm trying this natural stuff. I'm like, don't use the natural stuff because you stink. And people are talking about you. Now, this is friends of mine. I wouldn't say this to a stranger, probably. So when you're on steroids and you're training a lot and you're doing high intensity activity, you got to take something that kills the smell. You can't walk around the gym and stink. These natural deodorants don't take away the smell enough. Okay, they just don't. And I know it's the aluminum that reduces the sweating, but when you sweat, that's when the bacteria play on the sweat, and that's where the smell comes from. So it's not, your smell is just not coming out of your body. It's being produced by the bacteria fermenting all the whatever oils that are coming out of your body. So I use the strong thing. When I stop competing and I don't sweat anymore in the gym, literally, I go to the gym, I don't sweat. I don't know why. I train hard, but I just don't, I'm not doing like high intensity, like, 600-pound squats. I just don't break a sweat. I could literally go with no deodorant to the gym, and it doesn't even matter. I don't smell. I take 2 showers a day, in the morning and at night. I don't smell. I was using this product, and I use it if I go out. It's called, it used to be called Primal Pit Paste. Carl Lenore turned me onto it, and from Superhuman Radio. And now they changed the name to Just Frank, or Frankly something or another. Just Frank, I think it's called, or something like that. It's the same product. It's on Amazon.com. It's pretty good. It takes away the smell. You're not going to, if you sweat a lot, you're going to still sweat, but you're not going to smell at least. I don't think this would cut it if I was on steroids and I was, going full blown like I used to. Now, I'm going to add another thing on top of another caveat on top of this. Women who take steroids and who train really hard and sweat a lot cannot use women's deodorant. And I've said this before in other little things I've done on this. It doesn't work. It's not strong enough. They need to use men's deodorant. Just get one that smells nice. I used to use this Baby Powder Fresh one. I love the smell of it. And everyone who would be around me be like, wow, you smell good. What is that? And it was the deodorant. Ban. That's what I used to use. Ban. I'm sorry. I'm getting old. I forget things now. Ban Baby Powder Fresh is phenomenal if you're in the midst of contest prep, or you're sweating your ass off all day long, especially in the summer. Women should use it too. I'm telling you, don't use the women's deodorant. It's not strong enough. Now, if you're not on steroids, and then it doesn't matter. But when you put male hormones into your body, you start producing those same chemicals, and that will get the bacteria in your skin fermenting that stuff, and you'll smell. And I smell. There were some hot girls in the gym who I remember back in the day stunk to high heaven. I wanted to tell them that, and I felt terrible, but I didn't want to embarrass them, and I didn't say a word. And it was because they weren't using strong enough deodorant. So to answer this question, we come full circle in a convoluted way. If you're taking steroids and you're training hard, you don't worry about you're putting so much junk into your body already. A little aluminum under your armpit is not going to do anything. Believe me, I used it for 30 years like that, and I think I'm still okay. But if you're not training super hard and you're not, taking anabolics, you could probably get away with one of those natural deodorants. And like I said, I've used them and I don't smell. At least no one's reported that I've smelled. I asked my wife; she'll tell me if I smell in 3 seconds. She said, "You smell like garlic." I said, "Well, that's because I had garlic yesterday," but I don't have the body odor smell. So it definitely has something to do with the anabolics. They definitely increase sebum production, and the bacteria will feed on that sebum. And that's why you break out more too when you're on anabolics. It's just more waste being released from the bloodstream through the skin. Guys, these 2 questions were great questions. They were from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. If you guys haven't subscribed to it, it's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. You get access to all the writings I've done, all the videos I've done. We put up a workout every single week up there. I do answer everyone's questions in an open forum, so everyone sees everyone's questions and answers. It's a great learning tool. Plus, I do a Q&A video every single week, So it's like having 2 Ask Daves every week on the app there, and you can watch that. That's exclusive to the app members. It's a great tool. Like I said, for $29 a month, you can't go wrong because you have full access to me. All right, just wanted to state that, and keep up the good work. Good questions.
Let's get to the Instagram questions again. If you're not already following us there on Instagram, official_RxMuscle. If you're watching us here on YouTube for the first time, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our shows, segments, updates, everything that we have on this channel. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. And as always, we appreciate all the support you give us throughout the course of the year. I know you might cringe a little bit at this question, but it's about quote unquote natural supplements. Are there any natural supplements that aren't really well known that can quote unquote give one the edge? And lastly, any quote natural supplements that have long-term side effects?
You know, on first perusal, it seems like a ridiculous question, right? Because everyone's saying, oh, of course, natural supplements don't do anything if you try to compare them to anabolic steroids. And in that sense, you're right. However, you have to understand that every single chemical reaction that runs in our body, when I say chemical reactions, that includes metabolizing and oxidizing fat, burning fat, building muscle, protein synthesis reactions, immune system. Every chemical reaction in the body runs off of vitamins and minerals as cofactors. Meaning, without enough vitamin and minerals, guess what? Those chemical reactions don't take place. So if you're trying to up your fat burning in your body 100% from what it normally is, because you're trying to get ready for a show and you're not taking in enough minerals and vitamins, you might not be burning all that fat that you're expending all this energy doing, because you just can't oxidize enough fat because there's not enough substrate around. I mean, there's not enough of these cofactors to metabolize or make these chemical reactions occur. So if you're vitamin, mineral, essential fatty acid deficient in your body, taking those supplements will be very anabolic to you. I know people who I've put on my V-Mineralized formula for vitamin, minerals, and antioxidants, Omega-Lyze for essential fats, and I've had them take an extra little dose of vitamin D3 at an extra 5,000 IUs a day. And you know what? They put on 4 or 5 pounds of muscle the first 4 weeks they took it, doing nothing else, and they couldn't believe it. And I said, look, there's no magic in here. You were just very deficient, because this person took no vitamins whatsoever. Another person was taking one of these Centrum one-a-days. Same thing happened. I'm like, you're not taking this. There's nothing in that vitamin. There's not enough of anything. You can't put everything you need in one capsule. I put them on V-Mineralized, Omega-Lyze, and vitamin D3, and same thing. They increased fat burning and they increased muscle mass. Now, it wasn't significant, but it was a couple pounds either way. That just goes to show you that just a small natural type of supplementation can make a big difference in your body. So you never want to leave I say percentage points on the table, because everything you do is like a percentage point here, half a percentage point there. Eating enough protein, let's say that's 3% of your success rate as far as building and repairing muscle and burning fat. Taking the vitamins and minerals you're supposed to be taking, that's another 1 or 2%. Taking enough essential fats, another 1 or 2%. All these little percentages add up, and at the end of the day, you might be losing 20% on the success that you could be getting, all because you're not doing things the right way, not taking off days from the gym. You lose another few percent because you're not recovering properly. So it's important to put everything together and do everything the right way, not miss meals. Prepare if you're going to go on a trip, to bring food or shakes with you. Doing all this stuff will ensure that you get ultimate success. And that's We're not even talking about drugs yet. This is just eating properly, training properly, taking the right supplements. That's a big deal. Sure, adding anabolic steroids on top of that is going to make things work better, but not unless you have everything else in order. So yes, are there vitamins and minerals and supplements you could take that are going to help? 100%. If you're not taking a good, high quality, high potency vitamin, mineral supplement and essential fatty acid supplement, in addition to extra vitamin D3, you're losing points. You're losing percentage points. You're leaving them on the table. Don't do that.
Let's go to S. Bonvani. Knee sleeves versus wraps. I'll even add, I guess, for elbow purposes in general, sleeves versus wraps, in your opinion.
You know, if you're going really heavy on, like, say, squats, for instance, and you know, I used to wrap my knees when I would go over for like 400. When I get up to 400 pounds, like 400, 500, 600, always wrapped, just for safety purposes. Even if I didn't need them, just kept everything together. And it was, once again, it wasn't a crutch. I didn't bounce off the bottom using them as a spring. I used it as a safety type of device. I think that that's smart. I don't really think there's much of a difference. The knee sleeves are not quite as, you know, tight as the wraps would be, because the wraps you can kind of adjust how tight you want to make them. They're a little longer, so you can kind of, I have a long leg, so to me it worked a little better, so I can go above and below my knee. Whereas the knee brace, those neoprene braces, whatever, they kind of like go over the middle of your knee, and I felt like it kind of restricted my motion, my movement. Now a lot of people like them because they can act like a spring, because it's almost like you have, you're reinforcing your kneecap too, which I never really wrapped over my kneecap. I kind of always left my kneecap a little exposed because I didn't want pressure on it, because it kind of, to me, it made it track wrong. So if you're asking my opinion, I would use knee wraps. Yes, they take a little longer to put on. They're a pain in the neck, but it's okay. You're going to be resting between sets anyway. I would use knee wraps for the heavy sets. I wouldn't be wearing anything on my knees for every single set. There's no reason on the lighter sets that you need to use them. If you're putting knee wraps on, if you're putting some kind of like neoprene wrap on, it's a sleeve, whatever the case may be, I think you're using that as a crutch. So I wouldn't be wearing those all the time.
Let's go to Mentbean. We have a lot of questions here that are in regards to your general philosophies on different topics. So a lot of good ones here. Mentbean, your diuretics protocol. So I guess from a general perspective, and then I guess based off different situations.
I'm not doing homework. This is a homework assignment, and you know what? And this is something I can't just give you like a template for, because everyone's a little different. I helped someone 2 weeks ago, and I didn't give them a diuretic till they went to bed because they were so dry. So it's different for everyone. I only give diuretics. I only use Diazide or Modiuretic or Trizide. They're the same. They're all the same ingredients in there. It's just called different things. I only use those. I only use them the day before a show. I never restrict sodium in the diet. I don't even restrict it the day before the show anymore. I used to. I think it flattens people out. And depending on how dry the person is, I only use Diazide usually maybe at 2:00 the day before the show, and then I'll use it before bed. So 2 dosages, and then I'll use a dose after prejudging, because I usually have people eat a burger, fries, and some diet soda. So that's my usual protocol. But more than likely, sometimes they only get 1/2 a Diazide the night before, or maybe 5:00 if they need that. Sometimes if guys have to make weight, like sometimes there's a weigh-in on Friday, I got to give them Friday morning. I got to give them when they wake up in the morning early, like 6 a.m. I got to give them half a Diazide so they can make weight, because then they got to weigh in at 4:00 in the afternoon or something like that. If they got to lose 10 pounds or 8 pounds, 7 pounds, you got to give them a diuretic. But other than that, like I said, I prefer not to have to do crazy things the day before the show, and I base it on how the person looks. So there's really no set in stone way of doing it. What I do that I can tell you is in stone is I don't restrict salt, and I don't really restrict water unless they have to make weight. Sometimes, like I said, if you have to make weight on Friday at 4 p.m. and you're like 8 pounds or 6 or 4 or 5 pounds over the weight when you wake up in the morning, I might have to give you a diuretic, and I might have to restrict water and food intake the whole day. If for some reason your weight does drop down below the weight requirement, in the middle of the day, I might give you a small meal with no liquid. It really depends on what the person looks like, and it depends on what they got to do, if they have to make weight or not. That's about as accurate as I can be.
Question regarding training style based off body type. Your thoughts on training for a natural bigger guy who tends to be on the endomorphic side and can easily gain weight, but hard to get or remain lean. Would you still advocate low volume training, or would you prefer a higher volume in reference to sets and reps?
Never use weight training as your way to burn fat. That's a big mistake. And people make that all the time. Oh, I got to get cut. I'm going to do high reps, higher volume. Well, do you think your body's going to hold on to all that muscle you just built if you're lifting purposely lighter with more reps? No, your body doesn't need muscle. It doesn't need the muscle. It's just going to metabolize. You're going to lose muscle doing that. No, weight training should always be high intensity, meaning that you should go as heavy as you can with good form and full range of motion, no matter what time of the year it is. Now, granted, if you might be squatting 500 pounds in the off season, pre-contest, you might only be able to do 350 because you might, lose strength. But that 350 should be very challenging to you. There's no reason. Burp. There's no reason to be purposely lightening weights and doing more reps. If you want to burn fat and you're endomorphic, restrict carbs and do more cardio, more steady state cardio. You might have to do 2 hours of cardio a day. Ronnie Coleman did 2.5 hours of cardio a day. Didn't look like he lost any muscle to me. Do cardio to burn muscle. Use your diet to burn muscle. Do your cardio to burn fat. Okay. Use diet to burn fat. Don't use your weight training session to try to burn fat. If you do that, you're going to lose muscle. There's no doubt about that. So if you want to keep and retain everything that you work so hard for, continue to train heavy. And like I said, heavy might be different weights in the off season versus pre-contest because you might not be as strong, but what your body senses as heavy is heavy, and that's all that matters. Okay, so take that for what it's worth. I've been doing this a long time. People who purposely lighten the weight up and do higher reps lose muscle.
Todd Payette Universe. I saw your recent comments on Vince Taylor, genetic wonder. How good do you think he would look at his current age if he did everything necessary to compete? If memory serves, Albert Beckles won the Niagara Pro at 61 years of age. Could Vince look decent at the Masters Olympia?
I think that I'll go on the record and say this. Vince is over 60. I think he's 65. I think that Vince Taylor could probably win a pro show.
Wow.
If he went all out, I think he's another Al Beckles, genetically speaking. I think he's got enough showy body parts that if he went crazy, and I know he's got a back problem. He's got some back issues, and that's holding him back from training the way he wants, or we probably would see Vince Taylor still competing. So I don't know what his back issue is, but assuming he can get his back to cooperate and he can train, because he never trained heavy. He just needs to train. I think he can put most of his size back on it. And, I know he can diet down because we've seen him get in shape a million times. So I think he can do really well. I just don't, I don't know if it's something that he's interested in doing at this point. I know he looks like he's gotten bigger the last couple of months because his arms look enormous. I would just show the video of him on Heavy Muscle Radio to Chris Cicito. We couldn't believe how big his biceps were, but I think he can do it. I don't necessarily think he's going to win the Arnold of the Olympia, but I think he could win a small pro show if everything went as planned. I'd love to see him in the Masters Olympia. The problem is that they don't have age divisions. I think they're just doing 40 and over. So, some of these 40 and over guys still look, they're still actively competing. I think he might have problems against those guys, but especially at the top level. But who knows? I'd love to see it, as a fan. I don't know if I would do it, but as a fan, I want to see Vince Taylor. I want to see everyone compete as a fan, But it's, when you get older, that's usually, sometimes it's just not something that you're that interested in. I don't know where Vince's head is at with regard to that.
I just looked up, 66 years old
Yeah.
is Vince Taylor. So, yeah, if you were to win a pro show at age 66, I think we'd be talking about a totally different rewriting history conversation.
Yeah, that would be like a record of some sort, I would think. Imagine.
Let's go to Bilal Hamide. Does it really matter what time of the day you take your creatine, pre or post workout, or plain in the morning with breakfast? In general, what dosage would you recommend for advanced lifters daily?
Yeah, I don't think it really matters when you take creatine. I have guys just by convention do it post workout and then post workout shake, just throw it in there with their whey isolate and their Carbolize or whatever they use, carb-wise post-workout. I mean, just because we know we need to get insulin to drive creatine into the muscle. I mean, you don't need a lot, but there's a pretty big insulin spike in the post-workout shake because there's carbs and protein that gets rapidly absorbed. So I just tell people by convention to do it in there. But I mean, I was lazy when I was competing. I used to just do it in the morning. I would have a shake when I got up, and I would just kind of throw it in the shake and just guzzle it down. Or I would just put it in water and drink it down and then I would eat breakfast. So it doesn't matter because what you're doing is you're loading that creatine into the muscle cell. So it doesn't matter when you put it in there, as long as you're putting it, reapplying it every single day. And that's the important thing. So some people like to do it in the morning. Some people like to do post-workout. Some people pre-workout. I wouldn't do a pre-workout. It might bother your stomach because it does pull water into the GI tract. So you don't want to get like diarrhea while you're in the middle of working out. So I would probably do it anytime other than, pre-workout.
Oh, the other thing about creatine that's been a fairly hot topic of conversation, concerns about hair loss and a link to creatine. Do you buy into it?
No, I don't buy it. I don't think there's enough people to warrant that. I know they do these esoteric studies, and but the problem is that there's no real life, applicability to a lot of these studies. And you know what? While there might be one guy who says, I lost hair while I was on creatine. Well, you're also taking 2,000 milligrams of testosterone a week. That could be the reason, also. So I don't think creatine is causing any hair loss. I really don't. I know a lot of people who took it. I just don't buy it. I don't buy the science. I've read the articles. I'm not really convinced.
Bobby Trap Lord. The second part of his question is something that you already answered regarding maintenance, but he wants to know, assuming you're at your goal, you want to just maintain, be as healthy as possible. Last week, we answered a question regarding test dosages for mass. How would you address in terms of test dosages for maintenance?
Well, if you're looking to just maintain muscle mass, I would go on hormone replacement dosages of 100 to 200 milligrams per week. I got news for you. When I stopped competing, what was it? 04 was my last show. I went on hormone replacement right after that show. Well, I cleaned out first, and then I went on hormone replacement, 200 milligrams per week, and I just stayed on that for a bunch of years. And, I felt great, and I was trying to downsize, and I couldn't lose muscle. I had to restrict food. I had to not train as much, not train as heavy. It was crazy, but I was holding 275, and I'm like, I'm not losing any weight. I am trying to downsize, and I can't lose a single pound. And it was all because of the fact that I had well-trained muscle. I was eating a high-protein diet. I was doing everything perfect, too perfectly. So you can maintain muscle mass on 200 milligrams of testosterone a week, no doubt in my mind, if you eat and train right. Can you build muscle on that dosage? If you've been on cycles in the past, probably not. But you can certainly maintain on that.
That transitions us perfectly into this next question. I'm very interested in getting your thoughts on this one. It's from Endomorph Boy. What percentage of retired bodybuilders would you say are on TRT? Recent images, Flex Lewis, Phil Heath, Lee Priest, Victor Martinez, etc., seem to indicate that they are, and in many instances have admitted as such in interviews. That being said, do you think TRT after bodybuilding is out of necessity or personal choice?
Both. I think that, if you've been on steroids for 15 years or something like that, or 20 years, there's no way you're going to be producing normal levels again, especially because you're 20 years older too, or 15 years older, whatever it is. So I think guys just feel too low, and they're not willing to spend the time to see if they can get their natural levels back. I was on cycles for 13 years, and then I went off, and I went on HRT for 10 years. And then I met my wife, and we wanted to have kids. So I went from TRT that I was on for 10 years, and I switched, and I went on nothing. And I just went on HCG, Clomid, HMG. And I did that I did that. We got our 3 kids. And then I just stayed on HCG and nothing else for probably 4 years after my last daughter was born. And I felt pretty good. My levels would go, they would fluctuate between 450, 400, 500, around there. And that's mid-range. And I felt pretty good. And then I had recently I had my ankle fusion done. And I was really concerned because if the ankle doesn't fuse on an ankle fusion, you're screwed. Like you might as well get your foot amputated at that point because you're going to be in chronic pain. You can't walk. So I was so scared that I said, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to go on hormone replacement. And I started at 100 milligrams a week, which was putting me up a little too high. I know it sounds weird, but I'm very sensitive to testosterone replacement. So I went on 75 milligrams a week, and I've been doing it since the surgery. I guess that was September, and I feel good. I felt really good. I actually went back up. I went from like 189 or so. I went up to 205, and that little bit of muscle I added, I felt really good on it. And then, of course, I had cardiac surgery, and I lost all the weight again. And now I'm down to 184. But once I can go back to the gym in a few weeks, hopefully I'll gain all that muscle back. But yeah, I just felt better on it. I did feel better on it. And there was no reason I wasn't on it. I just felt good on the HCG, so I never really did anything. But I wanted to optimize. I wanted my levels high normal. So if you like the high normal feeling of about 850, 900, then I think HRT is fine. And I think a lot of bodybuilders just don't feel normal. They don't feel right when they're off, after coming off of, being on for 15 years. And so I would say 95% of probably retired bodybuilders are on HRT, and for good reason, because their levels are just not high enough. And you know what the truth is? If you are low, let's say you're in the 200s or the 300, even 300, which is considered quote normal, but it's low normal. You're at a higher risk for stroke, heart attack, cancers. There's solid evidence of this. So HRT is definitely good for you. Now, if you have a cardiomyopathy where your heart is too big, or there's issues with, that might be a contraindication. That's something you might want to discuss with your cardiologist. But other than that, if you're pretty much healthy in every other sense of the word, then I think HRT is great. You just want to watch as you get older, prostate, because testosterone will convert to DHT, dihydrotestosterone, which we know will irritate the crap out of the prostate. And you do not want to get an enlarged prostate. It's not fun. I know a lot of people with the problem. If you are sensitive or your DHT levels do get high, you might want to try my product Testolize, which has a really, really high potency form of saw palmetto in there, and it will reduce DHT levels without bottoming them out. That's probably something that you can do as a safety net. That's the only thing I would watch out for in older guys who are taking HRT: prostate, because if your prostate gets too big, it's going to drive you nuts, especially at night when you're trying to sleep and you got to get up and pee 40 times. Romano was telling me about it. That was happening to him. I got him on some Testolize, and it solved his problem. So keep that in mind. Once again, check your levels with the doctor. And there's nothing wrong with taking it as long as you're not overdoing it. Because then what happens is guys start taking 150 milligrams a week. They're at perfect levels. And they're like, well, why don't I just do 400 or 500 milligrams a week? Well, now you're on a cycle. So don't get carried away. That's my only advice.
Stay tuned, 3 more questions. Fairly similar in terms of, the bulk of your last answer. It's from Mr. Moore, 55 Indy, says he's been taking our supplements for the last 3 years, so we appreciate his support in his business. I'm 68 years old, trained all my life on TRT 60 last week, turned 60 week over 2 years. I'm not sorry. On TRT 0.60 a week over 2 years. Okay, I misread that. Last year, my levels started dropping, both total and free. Found a 2.3 centimeter nodule on my left adrenal gland. Cortisol, estrogen, complete blood work is all good. Any ideas why they would drop? I trust you more than my endo doctor. So yeah, like I say, he's been on supplements for 3 years. So yeah.
The problem, what he didn't really tell me, is was the adrenal tumor they found, was that causing his body to crank out any hormones? Because if you have an adrenal gland tumor that makes you produce more DHEA, okay, which is an adrenal androgen, which in women is where they get their testosterone from, that might be telling your body, hey, shut down natural testosterone production because we got too much of this adrenal androgen coming out. So that could be an issue. Assuming that's not the issue, I don't know why his total would go down and his free would go down. That seems like the only plausible reason to me. I would like to see what his DHEA levels. I bet they're high, and if the DHEA levels are high, that would account for why his testosterone and free and total went down. So I didn't really get enough data from him. And that's why a lot of times these questions are hard to answer. When I do phone consults with people on these, they can give me all the data they have. They can send me their blood work. And usually if I look at everything, I can tell them what the problem is. But given this limited amount of information, I would just probably say that maybe he is producing too much DHEA.
Nico Cantemir, I know you explain a lot how you implement your rotational diet. How many days you use carbs and days no carbs, and how would you change the rotation? I mean, he does kind of preface that you have explained this in the past, but if you can give a refresher.
Well, everyone has their own type of, a lot of people do carb cycling. I happen to do carb days and no carb days. So on the no carb days, I'm feeding people a lot more fat in place of the carbs. Protein's always high. And then on the no fat days where I'm eating some carbs, I have people doing varying amounts of carbs. Now it depends on the person. If I got a 280-pound bodybuilder, they're probably going to be eating, 200, 220, 240 grams of carbs per day on the carb day. If I get a, 220-pound bodybuilder, they might only be eating, 160 grams of carbs for the day. So that the amount of carbs that I give a person is dependent on their size and on their metabolic rate. Because I have a lot of big guys that are just terrible carbohydrate metabolizers. And they would almost rather just do my ketogenic diet, just do the protein and fat diet, and just once a week have some carbs like on a cheat meal. So it really is dependent on the person I'm working with and what their metabolism is and how much body fat they have to lose too. That's a big thing as well. If a guy, when I first start people off on a diet, we're 18 weeks out, a lot of times they're eating 3-4 days in a row with carbs and only one day with no carbs. As we get closer to the show, and if we need to up the fat burning process because it's not happening fast enough, they're going to eat less carb days and they're going to eat more protein and fat days. And that's, once again, dependent on how their body responds.
We'll take one more question. Actually, it's really about you post-surgeries from Dedgwick. It's been 2-3 weeks now, I think, since you've been home from the hospital. Obviously, episodes within the hospital, different chapters. How are you now? Just in terms of your energy levels, how do you feel 2 or 3 weeks post-surgery?
I feel pretty much like myself. Back to my energy levels are pretty much where they were. I might take a nap during the day, but like my wife points out, she's like, you used to do that anyway, or you used to like to do it anyway. When I work out, I do like to take a nap after I come home and eat something. I'll take a 20-minute snooze sometimes, but I don't really feel fatigued anymore. I feel pretty good. They don't want me lifting anything too heavy for another couple of weeks still because I have, I had part of my sternum opened up. So they don't want that bone to separate. They want that bone to knit tight. What I will tell you I have like just on the right side, I have this like little lump right here of like, it's how like when sometimes you'll bang a bone, you get like a bone bruise. That's what it feels like. And I went for a chest x-ray on Friday because I had to go see the cardiologist and they want to make sure you don't have any fluid on your lungs. And he didn't say anything and the report didn't say anything, but my wife went back and looked at it because I was telling her how I'm really kind of sore right in this one little spot. And it looks like I have a little crack in one of my ribs. So I bet you when they opened me up, they must have cracked a rib. And that's the only pain I have in my chest. Where the incision is, I have no pain whatsoever. So I think I have a little bit of, I don't know if it's a broken rib or a cracked rib. I think I have something that's going to take a little longer than I anticipated it healing. Because when I do certain movements, I feel it, it's if you would break a rib. I don't know if anyone ever broke a rib. I cracked a rib once stupidly on a jet ski, and it was sore for probably about 3 or 4 months until the thing finally healed. But so that's the only residual inkling that I even have of the surgery, other than the scar. Everything feels good. I'm doing everything. I'm driving. I'm doing everything I normally do. I'm working full-time hours now. It's so. In that sense, the recovery went well. I can't really complain. My blood pressure is good. It's funny, since I came out of the hospital, I haven't taken any blood pressure medication. I had to stop it because my blood pressure was too low. So I don't know if this is a permanent thing or if it's temporary, but I will say this, for some reason, my blood pressure issue is solved. It's been cured temporarily. And I don't know if my heart's pumping more efficiently now or what the reason is. It doesn't make sense to me. Logically, I'm trying to sit down and figure out why that might be. But they did tell me sometimes after surgeries, people just don't need their blood pressure medication. Sometimes it's permanent. Usually it's just temporary. So far, so good. So if I never need blood pressure medication again, I guess that, it wasn't such a bad thing. It wasn't such a bad side effect, at least. But I appreciate a lot of people have still been reaching out and asking about me. And, I talked to Ed through Messenger. Ed Pariso reached out to me. And Ed had undergone cancer surgery a couple of years ago. He had a bunch of stuff removed, that he was facing his own mortality. And I'm happy to report he just got a CT scan, and he's clear. No cancer in his body. So,
wow.
Ed, we love you, man. You and Betty are doing a great job down there in Texas, and I'm so happy that you're doing well. Thank you for reaching out to me, and he's been checking on me and seeing how I'm doing. So I appreciate that as well. And we at the end of the day, we're all iron brothers and sisters, and we all have to watch out for each other and support each other. Whether we've had arguments in the past or not, doesn't matter. We're all in the same boat. No one wants to see anyone get sick or die or anything like that. And so we all have to pray for each other, and we all have to send energy out, healing energy out, because we're all gonna, at one time or another, we're all gonna face something that's gonna happen to us, and it's nice to know that we're all there for each other at the end of the day. So thank you.
So some good news there, and good to know Ed's doing much, much, much better now. So that's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. All new episodes of After Hours, Heavy Muscle Radio, and then, of course, tomorrow, all new episode of Iron Rage with Lee Priest. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.